Listen closely to this audio. It is the sound of a human voice recorded over a century ago, pressing into a spinning cylinder of wax. Those faint syllables belong to the Chumashan language family, a group of distinct languages like Ventureño, Cruzeño, and Obispeño, spoken along the California coast. Today, there are no first language speakers left. These are dormant languages. We possess thousands of these recordings, alongside tens of thousands of pages of handwritten field notes. But possessing a massive archive of raw audio and chaotic transcriptions does not automatically result in a functional language on its own. A person cannot learn to speak by simply reading a museum manifest. To take these dormant vocabularies and make them living, teachable systems requires processing raw salvage linguistics into a practical, communicative language teaching framework. Saving a language from extinction demands a multi-stage engineering process. We have to translate fragile artifacts into applied cognitive tools. The initial instinct is to rely on a descriptive grammar. This is a mathematical, structural mapping of a language, written by linguists for linguists. This diagram illustrates exactly what a descriptive grammar analyzes. It breaks a Ventureño Chumash sentence into abstract syntax, mapping out the precise rules of phonology and morphology. It tells a researcher exactly how the language behaves under a microscope. While these grammars map every rule, the human brain during conversation doesn't access language as a series of static definitions or syntax trees. There is a cognitive gap between identifying a grammatical node and internalizing a response. This is why a structural schematic cannot teach a person to drive. Knowing how the engine is built is not the same as learning to steer. The solution is a pedagogical grammar. This is an engineered tool designed explicitly for second language learners. It prioritizes usability, pacing, and human communication over exhaustive academic documentation. Pedagogical grammars are different cognitive architectures. Building one requires an entirely different set of theories about how the human brain actually acquires language. For a dormant language, the pipeline begins with a severe constraint. We have no native speakers to converse with. We rely entirely on salvage ethnography. Much of this work comes down to one ethnographer, J.P. Harrington, and his dedicated native consultants. Individuals like Rosario and Fernando Librado supplied the foundational data that is now housed in institutional archives. This raw data is incredibly fragile. Harrington's notes are notoriously hard to decipher, and the physical wax cylinders deteriorate with every playback. To make sense of this, linguists apply basic linguistic theory to the chaos. This establishes the initial descriptive baseline, identifying the sounds, the nouns, and the verb structures. Researchers cross-reference Harrington's scattered notes with modern typological research, comparing the Chumashan patterns to how other languages globally organize their grammar. This descriptive phase successfully locks down the rules of the dormant language, yet the data remains trapped in an academic format, inaccessible to a new student. To make the leap to the classroom, descriptive data must flow through a theoretical pipeline, second language acquisition, or SLA. One route, universal grammar, triggers mental switches. Another route, functionalism, maps forms directly to meaning. Language exists primarily for communication. It maps forms to communicative meanings. Meaning takes priority over structural memorization. A single sentence recorded by Fernando Librado looks completely different depending on the theoretical filter.
One creates a grammar drill, the other creates a conversation prompt. The SLA theory a curriculum designer selects dictates the entire instructional framework. It determines how the learner will interact with the data on day one. In indigenous revitalization, sociocultural theory provides a framework where language is a tool for cognitive mediation, inseparable from cultural context. Under this theory, descriptive data is repackaged into culturally organized activities. Learning the language means participating in the historical and institutional contexts that shaped it. Instead of memorizing aquatic vocabulary, a student learns Ventureño Chumash through the specific physical task of fishing or constructing a traditional house. By embedding the grammar in these tasks, sociocultural theory provides a mechanism for reviving the linguistic system and the specific cultural worldview it mediates simultaneously. Theory determines the goal. Methodology determines the procedure. We have to decide exactly how the instructor behaves in the classroom. Historically, language instruction relied on the grammar translation method, memorizing rules and translating texts, or the audiolingual method, which used intense, repetitive drills to build habits. These approaches failed to produce communicative fluency. They punished errors heavily, creating individuals who could read a text perfectly but could not ask a question in reality. This visualization maps the shift to communicative language teaching, or CLT. It dissolves the rigid rows of historical drills into a dynamic web. CLT prioritizes communicative competence over rigid structural accuracy. Within CLT, task-based instruction takes the archival data from Harrington's notes and builds functional, real-world interactions. The student learns to accomplish a specific goal, like trading or navigating, using the target language. CLT acts as the final translation layer of our pipeline.
It takes the frozen grammar of an archive and turns it into functional, unscripted dialogue. We can see the results of this pipeline operating in the physical geography of the Chumash people. Using the archival texts provided by consultants like Librado and Juan Esteban Pico, modern linguists and tribal members are actively mapping ethnographic place names back onto the California coastline. Linguistic translation identifies specific island locations like Moop Mosek Pot Sech, the Cave of Three Mouths on Santa Cruz Island. When a modern learner listens to a century-old wax cylinder today, they are hearing the specific phonetic contours of their own landscape, structured into a lesson they can immediately practice. By filtering descriptive data through SLA theory and CLT methodology, the archival artifact ceases to be a relic. It becomes a living tool. The journey begins with the scratch of a needle on wax. It requires organizing chaotic ethnography into strict descriptive linguistics, pushing that math through the filter of cognitive acquisition theories, and finally executing it as interactive methodology. A pedagogical grammar is the strict antithesis of a descriptive grammar. It strips away the mathematical proofs and leaves only the executable code. It is a highly engineered cognitive bridge, constructed to close the gap between an archive of dead texts and the mind of a living human. The ultimate purpose is reactivating a dormant linguistic system in a new generation, allowing them to think, mediate, and communicate in the exact syllables of their ancestors. Revitalization starts with the historical archive and ends with the active engineering of a framework that allows the future to speak.